Hi everyone, it's Will from the Anastasia Island branch, and we're here for another edition of Quirky History. So since last month we did the history of toilet paper, I thought it might be fun to continue in that same vein this month and talk about, let me bring it up right here, space toilets. We're all aware of NASA. The Cape is right down the road, a few hours away here in Florida. We've seen shuttle launches. We now get to see SpaceX launches. Many of us have seen movies like Apollo 13. We know of the moon landing, and movies like Hidden Figures, and we see all this work that goes into sending people and materials into space. They don't really talk about how they use the bathroom. So let's get into it. So we have the space race, which is the technological race between the US and the Soviet Union on who's superior, right? Who is going to get to space first? Who's going to get to the moon first? Now, the Soviets beat us into space, but we would later beat them to the moon. So one of the first things that NASA did was like, okay, the Soviets have beaten us into orbit. They beat us into space. We got to put a person up there. And that's what they did with Alan Shepard. And they spent hours and hours working on the flight, getting the rocket to work just right, making sure that capsule could come back down safely. But they spent literally 0 minutes on how he was going to use the bathroom. They didn't think it was going to be needed because the flight time itself was only supposed to last 15 minutes. But he ended up sitting on the launch pad for hours. So he eventually had to relieve himself in his suit, because to take him out of that, they would have to, break everything down, take another few hours to get everything back loaded. So because of that, NASA very quickly realized, like, we need to figure out a way for these astronauts to use the bathroom. So you have some early options. Early options dealt solely with urination first. The first one they thought of was a roll-on cuff, which would roll on a man, and it was designed for urination only. It did leak. It didn't have a good seal. John Glenn is the first astronaut to actually use it. This picture here is actually one of the early, you can call it like a diaper. It's not really a diaper. It's not the same material, but the same function as a diaper. I couldn't find any pictures on NASA's website on what these roll-on cuffs look like, but they do have some descriptions on what they look like if you're interested. So the Gemini missions had astronauts in space a lot longer, and long enough to realize, like, okay, we have to think about more than urination. So NASA was forced to deal with defecation. How are you going to take care of that? They literally, the first system for that literally was a plastic bag that was taped to the astronauts' butts. It was taped to keep it from, floating away in zero gravity, keep it in place so they wouldn't have to, I guess, try as hard to hold it in place. But then afterwards, you had to close the bag up and mix it together, because it mixed with the bactericide to kill the bacteria that would grow, to keep the bag from expanding from all the gases. They were afraid if it was allowed to expand uncontrollably, it could actually burst. And I don't think anyone wants to deal with anything floating in space that's not supposed to be floating in space around you. There are a couple of instances, or at least one I know of, that the astronauts in question, someone missed the bag and they had to remove some floating feces around them. So nothing too crazy, thankfully, got taken care of. But, there's some learning curves with some of this as they figure out how to use the bathroom in space. So by the time we get to the Apollo missions, which are the missions that put Americans on the moon, they needed something a little bit better. They needed something for the spacesuit, because they fully envisioned astronauts walking on the moon, and they were correct. So they still used a baggy-like system within the capsule for defecation, but they figured out a way to not only urinate in the suit, but that also defecate in the suit. They call it a fecal containment system. And it was a pair of undershorts with several absorbent layers. It doesn't sound comfortable at all, but at least would keep everything contained until you can get back in and, I guess, clean yourself off. And next we have Skylab. So Skylab is the first space station. Didn't last very long, but once NASA created Skylab, they're like, okay, we really need to figure out a way for them to use the bathroom for realsies, because you can't just use a baggie anymore. You need a place to put any sort of waste material out of humans, because now they're going to be up in space a little bit longer. It's not only going to be a few days, it's going to be weeks, maybe months. So the longer stays meant NASA had to create an actual toilet. And the first toilet in this first space lab is literally a hole in the wall. And this diagram right here actually shows the orbital workshop waste management compartment. That hole used a fan and a baggie to suck everything into it to keep it from escaping elsewhere. And the feces were dried and either dumped, but a lot of it was kept for studying, because this is when scientists really want to start looking at how does the human body react in space. Does it remain healthy? And one of the ways doctors can use to see if humans are healthy are by studying stool samples. So they studied everything they could about these astronauts to include what came out of them after they ate. So we get to the shuttle era. With the shuttle era, we also have a real space toilet, and we have women going into space. NASA finally creates the first thing designed for women to use the bathroom in space, and it's the disposable absorption containment trunk. And it allowed females to finally be able to urinate in space. From the descriptions I got, they were shorts, and the trunks went almost down to the knees and sealed around the knees to hold a couple liters worth of urine. Definitely enough to, get them to, let's say, the space station later, or get them through a space shuttle flight without too much discomfort in that water going elsewhere. The space shuttle also was equipped with a $50,000 waste collection system, i.e. a toilet. The opening was pretty small. It was less than 4 inches wide. It was so small that astronauts actually had to practice on Earth how to use it. I don't think they literally used the toilet, but they had to practice sitting down and making sure everything was aligned properly, for they were in space, again, in zero gravity. They'd be able to aim correctly and get everything in there that's supposed to go in there. Paper was also not allowed in the toilet. So even though you could flush, essentially, it's not really a flush system, it's a vacuum system, but the system wasn't designed to also take paper into it. So any paper you use, toilet paper you use, had to be disposed of separately. So we have Skylab, we have the shuttle program, and then we finally get the International Space Station, which is still up there now. The toilet in the International Space Station is bigger than the toilet on the shuttle. It's about a dinner's plate-sized hole, so a little bit easier to aim into. A fan vacuum will suck excrement away. There's a separate system that's used for urine. So if you've ever been in a porta potty, there's the toilet portion and then a portion for men to urinate. This is kind of the same concept, only the funnel system is also designed for women. Everyone gets their own, they call it a cup thing that's issued to them. That's supposed to be fitted based off of, I guess, size. I'm not really sure how they determine who gets what, and I couldn't find any pictures on what they actually look like, but everyone gets issued their own, so there's no, you're not using someone else's pee cup, basically. So, and about 80% of that urine is then recycled and filtered for water. So when you're staying in space for months at a time, someone's, stayed there for a year, you have to think about water. You can only take so many things with you. So anything they can recycle on the space station is a plus. It means they can stay longer if they need to. And water's a big one. So they figured out a way to make that urine into fresh water for them. And the astronauts now use a maximum absorption garment for spacewalks. So the little diaper thing that goes in their spacesuits. It's a better version of the original space trunks they used to urinate in. But everywhere, toilets do eventually break. So the toilet in the space station broke in 2008. The section that broke was the urination system, not the fecal system, which I consider a plus. So they didn't have to worry about what to do with that waste, at least. But Russia is the one who provided the replacement toilet at $19 million. I don't think I've said on anything that cost $19 million. Maybe an airplane. I don't even know if they cost that much. That's an expensive toilet. So Russia provided it. They changed it out. The space station was out of toilet for, I believe it was a few months before they got another one up there to replace it. All the astronauts were fine. No one got sick. They figured out other ways to, contain their urine until then. So it all worked out pretty well in the end. So in the future, NASA is looking at expanding their waste collection system within their spacesuit. They understand that what they have now is not going to work for long distance trips. And by long distance, I mean they're looking at going to Mars. So how do you have a spacesuit that can adequately deal with not just urine, but fecal matter as well? So in 2017, they launched the Space Poop Challenge to go worldwide to look for different ideas and prototypes in order to remove fecal matter from a spacesuit. And a guy won. It's just still in prototype. They haven't figured out exactly how to use it yet, but the idea is that it connects on the outside of the spacesuit and it can actually remove that fecal matter from the spacesuit so someone's not sitting in it for an extended length of time. And that is the quirky history of space toilets. I'm sure as we move forward, they're going to look different and have different ways of doing things. But that's where they're at right now. We can only imagine what they might look like if we actually make it to Mars. So if you have any suggestions on a quirky history, please comment below on our Facebook page. If you're on YouTube, send us a direct message either through Instagram or Facebook to let us know what type of topics you would like to see on quirky history. And have a great day. Bye.